I
I
saw
went
it.
and saw Flash. It's so funny. Like discovering the like main thing about Agnew and I that's like good. I'm like figuring it out now.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
But you guys have always been. Oh, I always love listening to the show.
me too. But it's like
You're figuring out like a deeper sense of like
I'm figuring out two
gelling.
huge differences about something that like literally was like the glue of our relationship. How like we
Oh,
experience movies so differently. And it's just
okay.
because of who we are as people. Like he's this engineer, I'm this like free spirit art
You're the
artsy
artiste.
fartsy, yeah. And he's like this by the book. So he's always looking at what to fix. And I'm just like, I'm glad we have it. It's amazing it exists.
Yeah,
And that was my
that's a good thing.
outlook going into the Flash. I was like, this is just unbelievable that they made a movie with Michael Keaton
Yeah,
and Ezra Miller, who I enjoy as the Flash, who I thought was probably going to be facing 20 years to life.
I know.
And he's second, and Warner
Dodge
Brothers
that
is going
bullet.
to axe the movie with the axe of Zaslav.
Axes. Oh yeah, yeah. There's so many variables with him that I think about, but I'll let you. What's going on with the John and Agnes show?
No, so I was just saying, like, I was really excited about Flash, and Agnew was like, it was horrible. I hated it.
Oh
There's
yeah,
there
yeah,
was
yeah.
there was so many moments that they just didn't continue that they should have. Blah blah blah. So anyway, I bought tickets for the Thursday early screening here in Florida, and at the Paragon, my favorite movie theater, where
Paragon.
they have a theater where it's like 25 seats, and there's like a grouping of the seats in the middle that are like two seater like love seat kind of little coves that you would get
Oh,
if you
okay.
were like a married couple and you kind of like are together instead of
Yeah,
just.
yeah. Like it's
So
intimate.
I plucked down the extra and I bought one of those, assuming that no one's gonna buy an empty one because who wants to sit in a little love seat with a stranger?
Right.
And as soon as I walk into the
Oh,
theater, you know,
he walks in.
the guy, I think he was in 30 Rock and he always has a different hat. I think his name was Jonah. That's who was sitting there. I mean, not in real life, but a man who resembled his girth and height.
Oh, really? Of all people, too. Like,
And dude, I'm checking the
what do
seats
you
like
do?
on Fandango on the ride to the theater, and I'm like, no one bought it yet. No one bought it. I'm
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
waiting in line for popcorn. All of a sudden, it's like sold out. I was like,
Oh,
oh, no, 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 no.
no.
So I walk in and I see that he's there, and I just keep walking, and I loop
No
around.
eye contact.
Like, well, I made the eye contact, but he didn't see it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
loop around
Yeah,
to the
what do you
front
do? Oh my.
in the not the front row, but the next one where I didn't have to do this, but I had to do this.
Oh, I got you. It's not
IMAX.
full neck strain, but it's up there.
IMAX.
Right. Yeah.
And do you remember the beginning of the movie where he's running and he's running and he's running over the water and he's just going so fast and he's running for such a long time?
Oh, yeah.
He's
It's so
running.
cool.
Dude, it was I felt like I was in Space Mountain. I was so close and he's flying and I'm like, ah. I was
Oh, yeah. You get
laughing, dude.
vertigo.
I'm laughing out loud. I was like, oh my god. It
Just
was
it's go and the segue into that too, where you're like,
so
something's gonna happen
yeah.
because they're not gonna open it with him like ordering peanut butter and jelly or whatever. And then it
Right.
happens, and you're like, oh, I didn't expect that to happen like that.
The Affleck stuff was awesome. The Wonder Woman stuff was so funny. I died at all the jokes there. He's like, I should just give all my money to stop poverty. I shouldn't fight people. What am I doing? My ego's too big to thank anyone for saving me. It was unbelievable. Uh, I loved everything Keaton did, and
Yeah.
I loved how like they die, and he goes back and he dies again, and
Right.
Supergirl and him keep dying. I was like, oh, I didn't expect that to happen. And Agnew was like, you didn't expect that to happen. That's the time travel. And I was like, that's why I didn't expect it to happen. I didn't think they would do the first thing that's been done with time travel. You keep trying to
Right.
change what's inevitable.
Right. I thought the same thing. I was like,
But they're
no, they're
going to
not
get
going to
out of it.
do the time like the movie the
Time travel.
time machine where he
Time
has to
machine.
keep his wife keeps dying because that's how he created the machine. I was like, they're not going to do that. But they did. So I'm with you on that. That I didn't expect that
Right.
either. I was like, oh, it's different,
I
because
thought,
he's reversing time. It's not like he's traveling. He's like creating that
new
like
times.
linear trip. So it's like anything's possible if you're going by that logic. I thought.
I don't want to ramble. I don't want to hog because I could go on. It's literally the only movie that I didn't do an out of theater reaction because I was so
Yeah.
they put so much in that movie and I thought did well. Now remember, I'm
Mhm.
two rows from an IMAX screen. Uh,
Yeah.
so when I was seeing the special effects, every time it looked a little um, weird. I wasn't like they're not. I wasn't like they're trying to do something and failing. I was like, I think they're trying to just make it look this way, because
Yeah.
it didn't look. There was no moment where I was like,
Yeah.
oh. It was all just
Right.
kind of like it all was
Right.
like
And
in
when you're
this.
that close and it's that much in your face, I mean,
I
you
couldn't
can't
really tell.
take it apart frame by frame.
And obviously, the babies' faces are fake. I wanted them to be fake. I didn't want them to have been using real baby. Like
Oh God,
the deep
no. Could
fake
you
baby. I was
imagine?
like, okay.
No. My wife said the same thing. She's like, "Thank God they look like dolls." Like that would be too much to have like real babies falling from the hospital. Like, no, you can't do that. They
And
they
of
did it
course,
right.
and of course, the internet just they just took the bait like blind mules. Like, of course, Ezra Miller on set was like, let's put one in the microwave. And people are going to lose their minds, forgetting that it's not plugged in and this is all fake. And they're going to
Right.
get upset. And they did.
I
Everybody
did
was like,
that.
put a baby in a microwave. I was like, well, it wasn't plugged in. And he was
Right.
saving the baby. And I was like, we're really reaching on this one. And it was so stupid.
That is stupid. I stopped reading about the Flash on the internet because it's all nonsense now,
It's all
It's
hearsay.
yeah, but when they put the baby in the microwave, it didn't occur to me that somebody would make a big deal about that, but I'm not surprised that they did. Because it's unplugged, it's like a way to like pinpoint it and do it. Obviously, there's an inside joke there. You're putting a baby in a microwave on screen because you can get away with that. Like that's kind of funny that you can get away with that in a movie. But
Right.
I'm not surprised that people like, of course, they're upset about it. And I do like, you can tell like when, do you remember a few
They
months
need
ago
to be.
after Ezra got back, he was acknowledging that he was like out of control or whatever. And they went back and did some reshoots. You could see what those reshoots were because he was making fun of himself. He's like, yeah, the Justice League, we're not very good at mental health and taking care of each other yet. Like there was a lot of that going on, and you could tell because he looked a little bit older than some of the other stuff. So
Dude,
I thought like
I
they had a good
agree.
sense of humor.
I think the Gal Gadot Ben Affleck stuff was shot like way more recently. And
Yeah.
that's when he
Yeah.
says, he goes, I know what sex is, but I don't want to have it. Is that this or something or whatever he's. I was like, that was Ezra Miller ad libbing, and he was just there with that crew. And I bet you they kind of ad libbed most of that. Like,
Yeah, because they're like on set and they're like, "Yo, all the shit's happened in the last 8 months. Like, let's run with it."
uh, uh.
I feel like
Breaking
Ben.
news. Breaking news from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. A lot of news breaking today about Deadpool 3. Ryan Reynolds
Oh,
posted like one picture from the set that looks like a paparazzi took it, but it's just like his new suit. It's just like a little brighter red. Jennifer
nice.
Garner. Jennifer Garner will be reprising her role as Elektra from the movie, I believe, Daredevil, where Ben Affleck
Oh,
starred. And then I
yeah.
think she had her own movie too, where she
Yes.
looks like the hottest she ever did. It was kind of like Alias, or maybe why they did the show Alias, because
Yeah.
she was Elektra. And Elektra is an interesting character because in the comics, she dies and then 2 seconds after she dies, she turns into a Skrull, and it's when the Secret Invasion storyline starts, where these aliens have been posing as humans for decades.
Oh, cool.
That's the show that's on Disney Plus with Samuel L. Jackson and Mendelsohn.
Yeah, Jennifer Garner sets Elektra Return.
Yes.
I
Yeah,
do remember her in
Trey.
yeah, in the original. I didn't see her own. She had her own movie. I didn't see that one, but I did see uh, Daredevil, and I do like her outfit.
I didn't see it. I didn't see it, Elektra, and I don't even think I've seen Daredevil, but a lot of people are like, it's good, and I always forget Favreau's in it. Like, Favreau's like a co-star. Like, he's
Yeah.
his lawyer friend, Foggy Nells.
Yeah, Foggy. He's cool. I like Daredevil. Ben Affleck, he's like blind and stuff, and I think for the time it was what, like 2002, 2003. There's some cool effects they did where like it's his vision and you can see like rain, like certain like if it rains on something, you can see like the depth of water. Like I thought they did a good job for 2003. I don't remember how well it was received, but like it was pretty cool.
Dude, that's it.
Colin
That's
Farrell,
what it
was cool.
Oh yeah, Bullseye.
Yeah.
And wasn't Ving Rhames Kingpin?
Oh.
Isn't that so funny?
think he
Nobody gave a
was.
shit that there was a black Kingpin. Nobody cared because it was
Nobody
Ving
cared.
Rhames. They're like, well, he'll
2002
kill
was a weird. Early 2000s were a weird time for movies. I feel like
there was still some cool 90s like we don't care stuff hanging around before it got
yeah,
overly
like if
touchy.
yeah, like if Unbreakable came out today, that would be like $1 billion movie. But at the time, it did like okay because it was off of The Sixth Sense.
They weren't
But
like ready for it.
Yeah, like they weren't ready for it. I feel like Daredevil kind of is in the same category. Like obviously they would do things differently, but
isn't it funny, dude? I think you and I are similar in that like I can appreciate what they're going for. Maybe like the outcome isn't like flawless, but it's like
right.
Since I know how the sausage is made, I can kind of always be like, oh man, that was a great idea. The execution is almost probably impossible to pull off anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. It's like I know what's going on. I understand how you made this, but like valiant effort. This is the best we're gonna do. It's fun.
That's why at the end with the Flash, I was like, dude, it is such a horrible, horrible, horrible thing that Zack Snyder wasn't just like given 2 years bereavement to go and go recover from his daughter.
Yeah.
And then let him come back and continue what he started, because
I
feel like Flash would have made more sense. It would have been less bumpy for people if other movies from the Snyderverse would have like led to it.
Yeah,
like
there was more of a roadmap to it versus an isolated uncertainty, kind of what they did.
Kind of like, hey, remember this old thing? It's like this was gonna be a piece of it that's pretty crazy,
right.
pretty amazing, but like it would probably have affected so many other of the movies.
Right. There's a lot of criticism about that.
When the universes were crashing at the end, I was like, all right, this is the only way you're gonna squeeze this in, and no wonder it's so long. But I get what you're doing here with the Christopher Reeves and God, Supergirl was so hot.
Oh, wasn't she? Totally.
Man,
I felt the same thing.
God, like
even my wife thought so. She's like, "Oh, she's so hot." I was like, "I know."
I remember that it was a movie. I think my brother and I loved it, and I remember like I think that was the first boner I ever got. I was like 6, and I was like, "She's just amazing."
Oh yeah.
Skirt.
The skirt, yeah, and like the form-fitting like S that like bubbles up a little bit. You're like, all right, I get it. Boned. By the way, it wasn't. Speaking of Zack Snyder,
tiny, lonely old Jewish men drawing you in their office. I can picture it now.
I know, in the 50s, like here we go. Hank, Earl, what do you make of this?
Supermensch, super yenta.
Supermensch, the yenter's taking it home. Michael Shannon, wasn't he? I read he was hesitant to reprise the role of Zod because of the whole Zack Snyder thing, and then Snyder eventually like gave him his like go ahead, like it's cool to do this. Is that accurate? that he like wasn't gonna do it until Snyder was like, "It's fine, like just
I'm
go
not
ahead,
a,
like it's
I'm
cool."
not 100% sure, but I think I remember hearing him being like, I was really excited to like do Zod, but a different slight, and I didn't really. He's
Yeah,
like, I don't know. He's like, we didn't really like we didn't really like do anything deeper. I was kind of like a stand-in bad guy,
yeah, it
even
was kind
though
of
there were
like on
like
the face.
a couple antagonists in the movie. They kept like
I,
rotating.
yeah, like, yeah, they did kept switching around. I do like the pop culture references, like Ezra Miller, like the Flash. When they were bringing back Superman, he mentioned Pet Cemetery like 3 times. I'm like, that's such like a great Stephen King reference that like a lot of people wouldn't even get that. I'm sure like people our age do, but
Oh, that's
like that
right.
like
Yeah.
it's like, oh, please don't make it like a Pet Cemetery kind of thing. It's like Pet Cemetery,
Oh,
and
it's
you're
like a
like, oh, it's
reverse. It's like the reverse of what the MCU does with Spider-Man. Like Spider-Man references movies that he's like, there's this really old movie first, and it's like Empire Strikes Back.
right, right,
And Ezra Miller will list like a deep cut Stephen King like horror. That's pretty good.
right. It was pretty
Dude,
cool.
my crowd were dying, and I was too. Like I thought every part that meant to be funny was funny to me. Uh,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm obsessed with Sasha Kaye, who's never acted in anything before,
Yeah.
as
No,
Supergirl.
and she wanted to be Supergirl. Like that was like one of her like heroes. It would be like
And
you being cast as Batman, like growing up, like watching Batman Returns. Like that's like one of the coolest stories, like Hollywood stories you'll ever hear.
it's and it's a totally completely different take of the blonde Supergirl, the
Yeah,
boner
yeah.
Supergirl. And it's like
Bottom.
both why can't both? It's like with the Ariel mermaid. It's like why just can't
Yeah,
both? Why can't we just both? Everything's more than one. There's no one to one
right.
in anything.
Yeah, oh, 100% with you. Yeah, there can be both. We can explore. We can do different things. And you know what? Sometimes when you do, it's a little cooler and it's not like the norm.
I always think of oh, Becky. No. Becca? Becky? Yeah, no, that's Aunt Becky. I forget who the oldest daughter is in Roseanne.
Becky.
When she got
Becky.
oh, yes, Aunt Jackie.
Oh,
Becky, the actor, was two different actors, but
yeah.
it was like the original one,
Oh, good
then
call.
a new one, then the original one came back,
Right,
and
right,
I was like, oh yeah, it's all pretend.
right. It doesn't
We're
matter.
pretending.
And it works. And they even made fun of that in Roseanne. Remember they're like, "Where the
Yeah,
hell have you been?" Like when they come
right.
back, and
Like
I
what?
feel like I haven't been here in 2 years. And yeah, it works. And you can switch it up, and it's fun. I gotta ask you for the Flash. Like when you said the audience, the crew you're with, or the people in the audience, they got the
The
jokes.
crowd.
The
Yeah,
crowd,
yeah, they were
um,
laughing.
they were laughing. Yeah, same with us. Like I felt like people got it. You're like, no, that is funny. It's supposed
I
to be
always
funny. You get it. And even like the scene when Bruce Wayne, when Batman comes out, like the first scene in the kitchen, the way he's jumping, like it's supposed to be ridiculous that he's like, and they even shot it that way, like the freeze frame when he like falls, and then next thing you know, he's like making spaghetti, and it's like,
I,
it was perfect because if you never like read anything about it or saw it, you would think, oh, Return of Batman, he's gonna come in like 1992, Blaze of Glory, and you're like, no, Michael Keaton's 70 years old. Like that's how he's gonna do it. And it was just so
yes,
it was
I love how
it's so
got
funny.
Gotham. Yeah, I know. Everybody always forgets. I don't know why. It's like you just skim over the word comic book. The first word of comic book is comic.
Right. Oh, good
It's
point.
all silly. It's all just to pretend on
Yeah.
the real world.
Right. It's not a graphic novel. It's comic
It's
book.
it's
Like,
fun if you it's really fun and like almost a miracle when you can like blur the lines between like real life and the comic book, but like for the most part, just it's
yeah.
make believe. It's make believe.
Right.
It's you're supposed to smile the majority of it.
Did you think that was
Uh,
funny though when he came out and he's like fighting in the kitchen?
yeah, he was
Like
with like
I
the
thought that was like maybe
broom.
a little too funny.
I
I think I
was
was like laughing longer, but I'm like, he's in a robe, like his nuts are hanging out, and he's like jumping over things. He's like falling, and it's like this is so funny. It's like
I
it was
talked about
ridiculous.
this. I talked about this. I thought it was funny because, and I think it was like, I, it didn't look bad. Like the stunt guy
Yeah,
made it look like, oh, okay, yeah, like this is how he would fight with like pots and pans because
right.
I bet he hasn't been Batman in forever because yeah.
And he
And
wasn't
they,
like
I like
good
how
at
he's
it.
like
He wasn't like
Gotham's
nailing it.
prime.
Yeah, and also I feel like that was the better, greater payoff when he does go back to Batman and he's like, I'm Batman. And then you get all like, goosebumpy. You're like, oh wow, he like just jumped back into it and it like clicked. It's like picking up a
Dude, this
baseball glove. You're
the
like,
the
you've got it.
fighting, the fighting with Keaton was better than anything that he's ever done, ever done. When he's in the thing, when he's flying around,
Oh
even when he's
yeah.
holding up the cape a couple times, blocking the bullets. I
So
was
cool
like,
against the
God,
Russians.
Tim Burton just like didn't even want him to be a superhero. He just like was doing all the other stuff around
Yeah.
Batman, just
Right. Yeah. He did a few
punching.
stunts and like a few punches, and it was all about like the character and like the gadgets and the lines. But in this one, it was like full-fledged action with
I
Michael
still
Keaton's
like
Batman.
it. Still like
Yeah.
Tim Burton's
Oh, yeah.
both of them. Love them because I love the bad guy focus. But it was so cool seeing Keaton's Batman. Obviously, it's
Yeah.
not him flipping around out there, but it was
Right.
amazing.
So cool. And the Batcave, like seeing that from the old movies, like
Dude,
yeah, it was like it was like
you mentioned
goosebumps.
the kitchen. It was the same
The same kitchen.
kitchen when
Yeah.
one of my favorite scenes in any movie when Alfred is like breaking Bruce's balls because he and Vicky are having dinner at this giant table and they can't talk to each other. And
Right.
they even
No.
did a callback to a line that I still use when you're at a table and the person you're sitting with is too far away. I always say, "Can you pass the salt?" And
It's
Ezra Miller Flash is like, remember when he's like, I'll
yeah.
pass. He's like,
Oh,
pass the
pass the
salt.
salt.
I was in the second row going like this.
Yes. And they did enough fanfare too, where like Ezra Miller like embraced that what you're feeling too. Like when he caught the bat star or whatever it is, and he's like, "Can I keep this?" Like you're thinking that too. Like you would say the same thing in that situation. Like, "Oh my gosh, it's Batman! Like, can I keep this? Can I have this? Is this
You
a code? Are we done
you
talking?
are.
What does this
You're
mean?
you're him.
You're
Yeah.
him." Did they
I'm Batman.
take? Let me ask you a question. So when Supergirl is in the Russian
Yeah.
lair or whatever that
Yeah.
is, the so Batman tapped into NASA to get the coordinates or whatever, and then he took the Batwing or whatever it is. Was that was she stuck in there because it was made of like kryptonite or like why was she stuck in there? That's like was my question. Like why couldn't she just
No
get out? Was
sun.
it because
No
it was
sun. Remember, they get their power from the yellow sun of the Earth. The red sun of Krypton, they're just
oh
humans.
okay. So
The
that because
the
she was entrenched, she's powerless.
That's why Superman in Justice League, the Snyder Cut, he puts on the black suit and flies
Right.
out right in front of the sun and like goes like this just to get like an extra boost
And
of
yeah,
dick
because that makes sense. So
for that Steppenwolf ass.
when they get her out, they show her like her
Oh,
outfit
Boney.
that's like removed. There's some boners poking around. Um, and that's why when they get to the surface, she starts kicking ass and she's like
Yeah.
just running in and slamming people and
That's why
everything
she's
like
like up
that.
in the sky for like a little bit.
Yeah,
She's kind of just
she's
like
tearing
soaking
it
it
up.
in.
Oh, it's so cool.
Try not to die.
Try not to die. Speaking of Tim Burton too, they showed when they did the montage with George Reeves and everything, they showed uh Nicolas Cage because he was going to be in that Batman or
You
the
get a gold
Superman.
star. Gold star for that segue. The death of Superman lives. What happened?
Yeah, what happened?
The great documentary by John Schnepp. That's the title.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was going down the rabbit hole today. I haven't watched it, but I was looking at all the
Oh,
stills and
it's
stuff
so
like
good.
that. What happened? What was it like was it the funding? 'Cause I heard they spent like 20 million so far to like get that movie going and like they dropped it.
You know,
or
it's a real
something.
shame. It's a real shame because
Kind of weird.
John
'Cause he was on top of
John
his game in '98.
yeah, they both were. Cage and Burton. They were
Yeah.
like
Right.
both like, you know, getting all the awards
Yeah.
or all the box office.
Right.
Mm. But the more interesting story is the great John Schnepp, king of the Shweddies. He's like a Comic-Con icon. He's like just the greatest like nerd comic book fan guy. He passed away not too long ago. He made a documentary about like what happened with that movie. The title of the documentary is called "The Death of Superman Lives: What Happened," because the
Oh,
movie was supposed to be
checking it
called
out.
Superman Lives. The Nick Cage, Tim Burton Superman Lives. Because I think Superman like
Oh.
dies in it, and then they like, but dude, the guy writing it, because Tim Burton was directing it, Cage was starring in it. The guy writing it, he
John Schnapp.
he didn't want a cape. He wanted like Superman to have guards at the Fortress of Solitude, and
Oh.
Kevin Smith is like, but it's called Fortress of Solitude, and why would
Right. It's supposed
Superman?
to be.
Why
It's
would
supposed to be
Superman
one person.
need guards?
Right.
He doesn't need guards. And the
Creative
guy was
differences.
like, we want him to fight a polar bear. They're the smartest animal. And he's like, "Oh, yeah, but he would destroy it. You know, like
Yeah.
this guy didn't
I do
care
remember
about
hearing
like
something about the polar bear.
the
There was something with
staples
the
of
polar
Superman.
bear.
You got to watch the documentary. So anyway, this guy makes a documentary, dude. It was like one of the first pirated things, and the guy and he made nothing. He made no money on it, and it like kind of downward spiraled him.
Oh.
And then he got real sick and passed
I,
away
I'm
early
I'm just reading this. Yeah, he died just a few
during
years ago at
Comic Con.
51 years old. Wow. Um,
And Kevin Smith is all over the documentary, and he all his parts because you know he's written like some Daredevil comic books, and he's in the comic book world. And at that time, he was pretty, you know, I think maybe like Dharma, or maybe it was around that.
yeah,
But he was,
I think so.
it was like he's the guy that writes the story. He's the one that writes the script. But there was this head honcho at, I guess, Warner Brothers, or
Yeah.
maybe someone else had them. He was telling Kevin Smith all the things that he wants, like in the movie, and he was like, "I want him to fight a giant spider," and he's like, "Well, what about
Yeah, the
Brainiac or
spider.
Lex Luthor or like all?" He's like, "I don't care about those characters." He's like, "I want him to fight
Yeah.
some giant animal." That's why Nicolas Cage is shooting with his
The
eye
spider.
beams a spider.
That's right. That makes sense. That's such a good nod. I didn't know that
It's
until I
crazy,
like read
crazy
into it.
deep.
But yeah, and I guess because at like '98, Cage was doing like 3 movies a year. It was like Con Air and The Rock and Face Off, and there was like Godzilla was
Hits,
coming out and Lost World, and uh,
and then like
they
Family Man and
probably needed like
Matchstick
this
Man
big
and like
monster, and like that's Superman's big enough. That's why I love Superman Returns, like the 2006 one, is they didn't have to. They put the like old characters in there, and like it's fun, like
I
it's
know, I agree. That's
yeah,
what like Ghostbusters too. I'm like, yeah, it's
right.
like why James Gunn is like it's not an origin story. He's already here. There's already other superheroes here. Like the world is already Superman was created in the 1930s. He's like if someone's alive right now and doesn't know Superman, I don't know what to tell you.
That's a good point. Yeah,
He's like
that's
it's
why
been here.
it's good Spider-Man stopped showing like Uncle Ben's death or Batman. They're not showing like Bruce Wayne's parents dying anymore. It's like we've seen it like a lot. People know, like audiences are smart
Kevin
for the most
Feige,
part.
he's like Spider-Man is the like top two most recognizable character in the planet Earth. We all know the spider bit him. We all know Uncle Ben died. We don't need to do that
Yeah,
again. And they just
right.
like skipped it with Tom Holland and did it amazingly over 3 movies.
Yeah.
Um,
Let
I
me ask you
wanted
a
to
question.
ask.
Gal Gadot. Oh, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. No, go ahead. I'm
I was
I'm
going to ask.
drawn.
Gal Gadot, Wonder Woman, was very short cameo in this movie. Was that
She was
because
in
of some kind
Shazam
of
too. Also,
was what's that?
she saves Shazam's life in Shazam 2 as well at
What
the end.
was this because of a contractual thing that she was
No,
in it so short, or was it just like it
no,
was
it
just
was like
the script?
can we put Wonder Woman in? Yeah, sure. You know, why not? Flash loves Wonder Woman. Remember in Justice in the Snyder cut, he's like,
Yeah.
"Do
Yeah,
you
yeah.
think do you think she'd go for a younger guy?" And
I know.
Cyborg's like, "They're all younger guys,
We
Barry.
we
She's
just watched that the other
1500."
night. The wife has never seen him, and she's like all into him now since we saw The Flash because like she loved it. So we watched it again, and you're like, oh, so good. The Snyder cut, you know, you're like, oh, there's just so much. There's so much good in that movie. You know, there's just
So,
so much good.
dude, it is, you know what it is like it's like a 15-inch sub. It's like you can eat that thing in 4 sections and it
Yeah.
could be
Yes.
a meal, and it's just so
It's
beautiful. Like
so good.
from like a, you know, I'm trying to like learn how to write a 3 arc story.
Yeah.
And I'm not even like halfway through the first act. And I'm like, this is like climbing a mountain. And I'm like, to
Yeah.
make a 4 hour superhero movie, like,
I don't know how you do it.
I'm just like, I don't know. It's just unbelievable that it even exists.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's
For
like,
that long too. I mean,
yeah,
just to like segment the acts of what
I
goes
know. I
where to
love
make
that
it
too.
flow. It's art. That's why it's a work of
Asteroid
art.
City does that thing where it's like, it'll be like act one chapters, or it's like chapter one, or no, it was like act one chapters Roman numeral one
Oh,
through
like they do that in
through
there?
three. Yeah, and it keeps
Oh, that's
doing that.
cool. Yeah, they
Yeah.
like
I
they
was like, okay,
structure it.
cool. Here's the third act. Here we go.
It's cool. It's cool. Yeah, especially when you look at like where in movies they do like an arc or like the twist or the climax or whatever, and you're like, oh, that wasn't it. There's still something else. It's like a cool ride,
I
you
know.
know?
When you're like, when
Yeah.
they fake you to the second pinch point. It's like another like wall you hit that you like the main character has to change.
Yeah.
It's like they get a little victory and you're like, yes. And then you're like, uh-oh, I know this one's going away. This one's not
Right.
gonna
Yeah.
last at all. It's
Right.
gonna get
Yeah. This is like a
worse.
little one. It's to keep it going, little momentum, but there's something else coming. Get
Yeah.
ready. When I hope the Flash. I just thought it was so good. I thought it was such a good movie. I know it's not making the money they thought it would, but I hope they keep bringing back Ezra
There's so
Miller
many
to do it.
factors contributing to why it's not doing good financially, and
It's because they didn't market it properly, I think.
to, and just because you can't really market it because it's a bridge to nowhere. You know, things at DC are going to change so much that all these
Right.
characters aren't going to matter
Yeah,
anymore.
right. I
But
know.
you're right. There was a way to be like, this is your last chance to see this
Right.
group together.
Yeah. I mean, if
Gal
they market
Gadot.
it differently, I feel like even if they change the name of the movie, which I don't think they should have done, it should have been called The Flash. It's the first standalone Flash. But people's
Ever.
perception, if they market it a little differently and put more emphasis on just earlier on, you know, there was like the Super Bowl ad, which was cool. But I mean, Ezra Miller's
Yeah.
antics didn't help, but they weren't the reason. They're not the reason it's not doing well. I saw it because of his antics. I wasn't an Ezra Miller fan until I started reading about him every day. And then I'm like, oh, wow, this guy's like really interesting. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, now I'm on board. Now I'm going to go see The Flash. So I feel like if anything, it helped. I don't
Yeah.
know. I just feel like the marketing, they didn't like do a good
Yeah, they
job.
didn't sell it right.
They didn't sell it right.
They could have sold it. It's another one of those Batman versus Superman. Like that
Oh,
movie
yeah.
should have made $1 billion
Right.
in 2 days. You know, Thursday and Friday. It's Batman and
Yeah.
Superman. It is the most recognizable symbols on planet Earth.
Right. And
Over the American flag, over Ronald McDonald, over
right.
Vladimir Putin.
And wasn't that and wasn't that always the question before they made that movie? Like since we were kids, it's like who would win in a fight, Batman or Superman? It's like, well, Superman. It's like, yeah, well, what if Batman and Krypton? You know, like there was always that was always a question in our
That's why it was
minds.
so cool because it was like, oh, he's the human that could like outsmart the,
Yeah,
you know, unbeatable alien.
who would do that? It would be Batman. So yeah, that's a really, really great point in comparison in that. And I thought The Flash would have been $1 billion movie. And the only thing I don't know as much about this stuff as you do, but I just feel like it's the marketing because it's a great movie. It's just even what you said, if because it's everything's changing in the DCU, they're gonna
Right.
There's
And
going to be different
people
players.
are,
Make it like The Last Chance and something.